Morning, everyone. Let's have a look. We got, as always at New Thought Centre, far more women than men. Because I was going to play a little game and get all the men to move one side and the women to the other side. We can do that.
Well, all the women are working anyway.
So what I'll do, you'll have to raise your voices. So if I ask a question, who has more power, the women or the men? Where are the voices?
Women!
All right, so women more power. And no, women claim power. The men kept quiet. And however, who's more accused of abusing power, women or men? Men. Oh, women are pretty quick at that one. That didn't take long. So, if we say that women have more power than men, but we also say that men abuse power more than women, what is going on here?
We're giving it away. Physical strength. We have physical strength.
Physical strength, okay.
Men want it.
Men want it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I actually asked a group of about 100 people this question quite recently. I know about an evenly split group. And of course the women yelled, "We have the power!" The men just kept quiet, kind of stunned. But then also the women accused the men of abusing power. And was, okay, so what is that? So what does power mean? And hence a question that went around. You know, we use this word quite freely. We say the position of the president is a powerful position. We talk about this as a powerful person. We talk about that's a powerful nation. We talk about the military as a powerful apparatus. What do we actually mean by power? And we say that women have more power than men. So what's going on? Where are they? So that was quite interesting around that. And just as we had all different responses here of what power means, and whilst we all use it as though we think we all know, we agree what it means, as though we have an agreement of the word, we use it. But there's, how many of us here? About 30 of us here. We had 30 different responses. But each one of us assumed the other agreed with what we said. No wonder we have so much confusion around the abuse of power and power. So what the work I've done around this, and it's been an important part of my work, because as Momi was introducing me, around about my mid-30s, my little crisis in South Africa, which is apartheid Africa, apartheid South Africa, where apartheid was everything, was racial, was religious, it was sexual orientation, was everything. It was just, as long as you're a white, conservative, Afrikaans man, you had the power, or you had control. And they confused power with control there. Everything else was abused, you know, was dominated. And as a gay man trying to live a life there, that was a real challenge for me. So my little crisis was coming out as a gay man at 35 in South Africa. And I could have been in prison for that. I was fired as a director of a major computer corporation for that. Because I went into my own meltdown mode. So that's about 25, 26 years ago, 27 years ago. So my work's been around there, trying to understand what is this stuff about? What is this abuse of power about? What does it mean? And if women have more power but men abuse it, what does that mean as well? So it came down to how we spell power. I think only a couple of people here actually spelled power with a capital P. Bryce was one of them. Most of us spell power with a small p. So what does that mean? So power with spelled with a small p in the dictionary says the ability to do something or act in a particular way, especially as a faculty or quality. Okay? So when we talk about a powerful man, for example, when spelled with a small p, we are saying nothing more than he has the ability to act in a certain way, for example, to chop wood or to lead an organization. That's what a small p, that's what small p power is. So a lot of people here say, what does power mean? It's to forward movement, it's to act, it's to direct. Okay, so that was what I call small p power. So is that the same power we're talking about when we talk about a quality or attribute of God? So as part of that, in my book, I do define it as the capital P power. And when I say power, when spelled with a capital P, is an elusive thing. That's why we struggle with it. Teachers of the Toltec wisdom traditions from the pre-Aztec Central American civilization have tried to define power. Power is neither invisible nor visible. Power can be felt, but then again, it is not a feeling. Power is both an object and not an object at the same time. Power can only be known through direct experience. To talk about power is meaningless. And as power is a force, yet at the same time is not a force, it becomes virtually undefinable, as we saw with like 30 different definitions. So we therefore think of power as an attribute or quality of the creator or infinite intelligence or spirit or source or the divine or God or the unknowable or whatever you choose to call that sense, that there is something greater than yourself. Okay? So that's kind of the definition of power with a capital P from the Toltec teachings. However, when we look at the Eastern philosophies, they seem to have a better handle on this than we do in the West. Under Taoism, we have the yin and the yang. Yin and yang, yin and yang. And yin, as we know, is the feminine, yang is the masculine in terms of that. And we all know the yin and yang symbol. But the power of yin is how they describe it. In the internal martial arts, or the yin arts, it's training the mind and cultivating the spirits, have always understood that to cultivate power, you need to periodically turn inward. With this space and quietude, we can develop the relationship to our inner world. We can process and let go of how life has affected us. When we get clear on our deep motivations, we can reconnect with that constant witness, self, that is less swayed by the comings and goings of life. We can realign to our center and we can house our mind back into our body, cleansing the doors of perception so as we can be refreshed when we re-engage with life outside of ourselves. Without this space, without this downtime, without letting go, and some said letting go, without these rhythms, it's an endless pushing of your own willpower. And that approach, and with that approach, how are you meeting life? Okay, and from the Tao Te Ching, verse 42, sacred books, a short paragraph, the way begot one, and the one two. Then the two begot three, and three all else. So a little bit of riddle in there. However, when we carry on, we look at other Eastern philosophies around that. We say, for example, in Hinduism, she would be called the goddess Shakti. Power is Shakti in Hinduism. This is described very nicely by an author here. It says, Shakti means power, energy, or force. Mythologically, Shakti is always described as feminine, often personified as the goddess, Devi, the divine feminine consort of the divine masculine god, Shiva. So, when we go into look at the more metaphysical and the esoteric, power is considered a female energy. It's a Shakti energy. It's the divine feminine. It's that intuition. It's an inner stillness. By the way, we all have it, men and women. Okay? Women are naturally born with it, hence the title of my talk. Women naturally have what men want more of. On that score, the qualities then on the Taoist, if I just read them out, are lunar, feminine, passive, intuitive, submissive, right brain, and compassionate. So these are energy components. They're nothing to do with sexuality. And that's where I think in the West we get so tangled up between sexuality and sexual energy. Okay, we don't really have terms in the West for yin and yang. We call it the divine feminine, sacred masculine, things like that. And we talk about sexual energy, and we sort of get a bit tongue-tied. We don't really have those words. But in the East, we have those words. So in the West, we seem to be quite fixated on sexuality and sex. Just ask any of the large mainstream churches what their fixation is and what's going on at the moment. And for some reason, we seem to get tangled up in that. On the other hand, yang is regarded as solar, masculine, active, analytical, dominant, left brain, and aggressive. Different qualities. So I say we all have those attributes within us. Men, if you go for the archetypal Adam concept, would have more of that masculine quality. Eve, the archetypal feminine, would have those female energy qualities, the Shakti, divine feminine. But we have both. So, however, in our modern society, especially in the West, we have fallen into the trap of being controlled and dominated by a patriarchal society. Now, I will speculate that this was the age of Pisces, the Piscean era, from 0 AD to around about 2000, and we're now firmly in the age of Aquarius, the Aquarian era, the feminine era. It's also the era of technology, the Aquarian era. And you know, the musical Hair came out, what, in the 60s? We started bringing that into the awareness, dawning of the age of Aquarius, and let the sun shine in. And so we're moving into that space, and I think what's happening is that men who have relied on this patriarchal cosmic energy are losing that divine connection, that source to the cosmic energy, as that is dying off, and we're going to the next cycle, the next yuga, which is the Aquarian era, which is naturally the feminine era, the feminine. And men, if they don't do their inner work, if they don't process this stuff, they are going to find themselves feeling depleted of their life force and of their energy. And where they get this from, to top it up, would be to steal it from women. And I think we're seeing this bullying going on more and more, because men, as much as anyone else does, needs power to survive. Women naturally have it, so the Shakti energy, the yin energy. Men have the strength, the force, directive energy, as a masculine energy. So men need that power to survive. They don't do the inner work, and we're seeing a lot of our leadership in Washington not doing much self-development work, if any. And we're seeing them stealing that power more and more through bullying from the feminine, because they need that energy to survive. We remove that energy from them and it collapses. Harvey Weinstein took him away from that, and he's a pathetic old man now after having abused power in Hollywood for so long. Literally abused capital P power, stealing that capital P power from women, using the small p power, which is directive force strength, to gain capital P power from women, because he has not, and many men don't do their work. So what does that really mean? I think it really means that we, both as men and women, need to come to that place of awareness around that. Men, again, that there's no point fighting this stuff. Let's take responsibility and ownership for it and start doing that inner work, that inner healing, the inner connection. So of course, what is the greatest source of power we know as capital P power? God. Because power is an attribute of God. So when we do that connection, inner connection directly to God, to source, divine intelligence, we have an abundance of power. We don't need to steal it from women or from anyone else. We don't need to have pedophilia rings. We don't need to have this kind of dark energy stuff going on to get power from others. It's not necessary. But if we refuse to do that work, mostly men, but also some women, then we'll end up having these problems. Likewise for women, though, is to understand that as this pendulum swings and the Shakti energy becomes the dominant force now, universal force at the moment, that women have been suppressed for so long, and so much anger and so much resentment. And in the Chinese medicine wheel, anger and resentment feeds, well, it controls lack of empathy and sympathy, rather. When you process through that, it feeds joy and happiness. So it's that controlling of the sympathy, empathy, compassion. And I'm seeing in the Me Too movement and other of these women's movements that whilst they're actually coming into their strength, the balancing force of power, women, sometimes it's with lack of empathy and compassion with that as well. And I'm asking the women to recognize that men are struggling. Men actually don't quite know what to do with this space. There's a wonderful kind of modern American poet, you probably know him, Robert Bly. He's quite elderly now, I think he's just still alive. But there's a great YouTube video on that called A Gathering of Men. I think it's great for both men and women to watch it. It talks about where does the modern man actually fit into today's society. He doesn't know. He's really struggling. So it's a gathering of men around that. And so how did we get to the point of losing our power? Because women have lost their power as well, and men kind of were split out of them when they became men. It goes back to the old mythology of Zeus. He writes a great story, and the splitting of two. And the story goes that when we incarnate, we make a choice. Pre-conception, we're both the divine feminine, sacred masculine. We're one with God pre-conception as pure soul beings of light. We then make a choice to incarnate through those parents, that mother, that society, that brother, that sister, those friends. We also make a choice then, what do I want to come into this world as? A man, a woman, black, white, gay, straight, for the soul evolution, soul growth. So I say being born a white, gay man actually is a choice at the soul level. Once conception takes place, that is no longer a choice. When conception takes place, I can't suddenly say, I don't want to be a man anymore, I want to be born a girl. Not going to happen. When conception takes place to my white parents, I can't say, well, I suddenly want to become as a Hispanic or a black person this time. That's not going to happen. So I say post-conception, those are no longer choices. And we always hear from a lot of religious institutions that being gay is a choice, and we're going to use electroshock therapy to make you choose something different. Well, it might choose me to shut up, but it's not going to choose anything different. So that's choice, yes and no, but different levels. So I believe we each come in with a choice to learn, the opportunity to grow as much as we can in this incarnation based on our path through many incarnations till this point. So each one of us in a complete and utter unique path. The fact we've kind of created a tribe here means we have common values and some common beliefs to support each other, like love, lack of judgment, discernment, so on, things like that. So once that choice is made, in the mythology, it says around about the age of 4 to 5 years old, something then major happens. Something very significant happens to us. And you look at little Faith. How old is she now? 5. 4 to 5 years old, little things like that. Suddenly become quite clingy, become a little bit uncertain, not sure what's going on. The mythology says at that age, we lose an aspect of who we are. Okay, so if you come in as born as a girl, we're talking about an archetypal girl, a girl embodying female energy, then the part that splits off will be her male energetic component. She becomes this little girl. Okay, why it splits off we'll go into, that's clear. How it splits off isn't quite so clear. The why is easy, because they say that the greatest learning for our soul selves takes place in this dense realm called planet Earth. Whilst we're up in the I've just lost something. Well, excuse me, I just dressed myself. So while we are up in the ethers, in this sort of very light vibrational frequency, we're actually not learning much. Everything's very nice, but come down to this dense world. Wow, look at us. How many of us have been through our crises, through our challenges? We're going through it still. It's a dense world of learning. So if we came in, so we need to have lots of little human vehicles for souls to incarnate into, to be born into, to have that opportunity. So if we were perfect double beings, in other words, we're perfectly divine feminine, sacred masculine in this body, I wouldn't have actually much interest in running around looking for a partner to go and fall in love with, because I'm actually a complete double being myself. A double being is when they talk about the union of the feminine and the masculine. It's because we go out looking for my soulmate, my perfect match, my double, my energetic double, and because I've forgotten completely that this thing's actually not out there somewhere, but it's actually inside here already, never went anywhere, I just forgot that I had it. That forgetting takes place around about the age of 4 to 5. Get distracted by shiny object syndrome, everything happens. Because I forgot that, I will think, oh, it's in you, or it's in you, or it's in you. And I'll suddenly fall in love, or actually in lust, with a person outside of myself. And that act is really important, because in that falling in lust is when procreation takes place, babies are born, new vehicles arrive for new souls to incarnate into. And so we still have the soul growth. So it sounds a bit sort of clinical and cold, that, but from a spiritual angle, there's actually nothing complicated about it. Okay? But when we've produced our children, we've done our work, we then say, well, who am I? What am I? What's this all about? Especially when the kids are off our hands, we're then left with this question still. So in the model which I created as part of this, and was given to me down at City of Refuge, actually, this Path to Freedom model, which is the whole book's really based on that. It's saying we come in over here, where this is axis, where we have society's expectations of how we should behave, from independence and liberation to conformance and compliance. Then over here, we have the soul energy. The soul energy, the integration, a complete integration of divine feminine, sacred masculine, I am that whole double being, to separation. And we know what religion does. It does its best to separate us from our God selves, saying the way through to God is through me. Priests or other people, hand over your power to someone else. So it causes separation. So we come in over here at conception. We go around about 4 to 5 years old. We find ourselves in here where we're starting to rapidly conform and comply to society's expectations of us. If we don't, we might just die. You know, we're utterly dependent upon society around us to feed us, to clothe us, to house us, to make us feel safe. So we learn very rapidly what the rules of the game are. Same time, around that age of 4 to 5, we're sent off to schools. Governments get hold of us, religious institutions get hold of us, the system gets hold of us. We drop into the matrix. And the matrix there is those rules which force us to conform and comply to other people's way of thinking. And that happens through our teen years. We fight up against that. We eventually find ourselves there. I call the place of total control, with separation from the soul being of who we are. We've forgotten that. Next to me, as a gay man, by the way, what stands next to me is a male form embodying female energy. I see these as a seer. I've been trained to see this, so I can actually look at each one of you and see what you're embodying. If I was a straight man, it would be a female form embodying female energy. That's how it'll look. A straight woman would be a male form embodying male energy. A lesbian, if you want to label people, would be a female form embodying male energy. That's the sort of the extremes, you know, the labels, you want to give labels. And I'm kind of over labels because we're getting to a very fluid world now. All right, so as we're getting more and more into this cosmic intelligence and becoming closer as soul beings and divine beings, we're embodying more of these energies. The more we're accepting of the fact that divine feminine sits right within me, the more I stop labeling what's outside of me, and it becomes this accelerating spiral. So I think we come through this as total control. At some point, we hit the point of crisis. I want to be seen for who I am. We can call that return of Saturn if you want. Age 28, 29, 30. Mine was 35. I was stubborn because I was too scared. I was too afraid. Sits there is fear-based conformance and compliance, apartheid South Africa, fear of imprisonment, and then that meaninglessness of sitting there in this corporate world, totally meaningless. But one knows where one sits on this thing, because I was sitting in a place of anger, resentment, powerlessness, and shame, ashamed. And that's when we know we're sitting in a place of conformance and compliance. We feel any of those energies. Okay? Eventually we want to be seen. We want to find our tribe. We have to go through a breakdown, which creates a breakthrough, hopefully. Spiritual crisis leads to spiritual emergence or spiritual emergency. Understand the why behind emergency. Take the why off it and you get spiritual emergence. That's all this process here, the crisis. So eventually you get to a point where you say, I'm no longer going to fall under conformance and compliance. I want the courage. It takes courage to step out of it. And then with that, in that crisis and meltdown, I surrender. Someone said surrender here. Just totally surrender to God, surrender to Spirit. And in that surrender and in that courage is the soul aspect, that thing next to us, I think that dreamed us into being, manifests in the physical. That's how it works. That's how the how works. So when we give up the fight, give up the control, give up the manipulation, give up the fear of being labeled, give up all this stuff to say, may God's will be done. God's will will be done. That's how it works. There's a reason people say that. So that's really what that's about. That model is fully explained. Now I want to just bring this little picture here again as part of that. I call it grand conspiracy. We've got to have conspiracies. We're in the conspiracy era at the moment. And so society, governments, and society we live in, doesn't matter which society we are, got rules and regulations, just area A here. Religious institutions keep us down here, separated from the soul aspect. They co-conspire. We say we're in a secular society. Right. You know, we see on our banknotes, "In God we trust." Seriously? On the banknote. When I did my immigration test, the first question I was doing, they got these 100 questions when you become a US citizen. And they pick up 10 out at random. As soon as you get the first 6 right, they say, "Welcome." The first question I was asked was, what is the definition, or what does freedom of religion mean? Interesting. So just think about that for yourselves. What does freedom of religion mean? Just 1 or 2 answers.
You can believe in anything.
You can believe in anything, okay? Anyone else? Choice, okay. What else?
Freedom to practice outwardly what you believe.
Freedom to practice anything you believe.
Without
Okay, all 3 of you failed your citizenship test. It's interesting because the freedom of religion means the freedom to choose any religion you wish or no religion at all. If you don't get that last bit right, fail. Okay? So then I go for my Pledge of Allegiance, and it's all being filmed, and you've got to do it, otherwise they won't give you a little certificate. Last thing it says, "So help me God." I felt like saying, "Excuse me, I just did my test, said, or no religion at all. What's the "So help me God" bit sitting on there?" You know, and we wonder why we live in a schizophrenic society. And then in God we trust on our currency. Yeah. So these are kind of interesting things. We got ourselves in that position. There's total control, manipulation by religious institutions and governments, and it's a mess, actually. But the grand conspiracy is we're locked in that place. There is no direct link back up to here where freedom's to be found. That's where the inner work takes place. Women know this more than men because, I'm cutting in and out, because power is the energy used to propel us through. When we're locked in there, we steal power from another. We give away our power in there. Men generally control people being locked in there. Government is male dominated. Religion is generally male dominated. The male energy, strength, keeps people fear-based in a meaningless environment, locks them in there. Okay? As long as we're locked in there, we're giving our power away, whether we're men or women. And those men locking us in there, we call them the 1%ers these days, are getting the power from us. What's happening on the mountain? That people are saying, no, we're taking our power back. We will not conform and comply, be fear-based. In this meaningless environment we're finding ourselves in. We want to take our power back, but there's no direct link. They have to do the inner work, have to get there, find that mana, find the inner power, find the inner strength. Because women naturally have it, more women in these kind of environments, they know that. They want to reclaim that power. I invite more and more men to get involved in this and do their inner work, not steal it from women, but do their inner work and reclaim that power for themselves. Because that's where peace is, that's where freedom is to be found over there. When we find that sense of purpose, our kuleana, and have the courage to fulfill our kuleana, is when we can actually become really powerful, formidable beings, not in an aggressive, negative, angry way, because that's sitting down over here, but the energy up there is a one of love, happiness, and compassion. Okay? Down here, but free and said, screw you, I'm not going to comply to anything. But I've done no inner work on myself, insensitivity, selfishness, greed, and ego. And we're seeing quite a few leaders today who are saying we refuse to conform to the way things have been done, but we're not going to do our inner work, and we're seeing that greed and ego taking place at the moment. To me, it's a necessary part of the process, so there's no judgment in that. It's just an observation. At some point, those people will go through their own crises, either at the point of death, or hopefully before death, they'll go to that, something will break. You know, a stroke, heart attack, accident, an illness, something happens when we wake up, that crisis. And at that point, they can come back into here, that place of inner peace and surrender. That's the point of surrender. Okay, so the idea is to find out where you are in this whole cycle, what you need to do to claim your own power, recognize that power is a female energy, strength is a male energy, for men to recognize that, for women to recognize that, and use that information wisely, and do the work you need to do to become that full double being, that full integrated self, where both the divine feminine and sacred masculine coexist in peaceful harmony within. And that's when none of this then matters any longer. That's a paradox. Okay. So those paradoxes we find ourselves in, actually none of this matters. Not one bit of it. Okay. Because it's all complete within. There is no you, there is no you, there is no you, there is no you. It's all here already. It's just that separation, that illusion sits over there. When we do that, we recognize that the I am, you are God, I am God, we're all God, God's self. Namaste. So thank you and enjoy the journey of that.